Michelle Vance. You can give them a warm welcome. If you are a first-time visitor to our usually monthly forums, we're especially grateful you're here. And if you didn't when you came in, we love it if you sign up just so that we can get your email and keep you apprised of the different things that Together for Timnath is doing in the town and throughout the town as we try to continue to build bridges between our neighbors and between our neighborhoods. My name is Jonathan Iterak. I'm the pastor here at Timnath Church, and I'm also the vice president of Together for Timnath on the board. And so we love welcoming you to these events. Just as a reminder, if you don't know our organization, Together for Timnath's mission is to advance the town's downtown district as the heart of Greater Timnath by promoting community-oriented economic, cultural, and social development, advocating as a unified and influential voice for downtown or Old Town, and fostering an active and informed and connected community throughout. And our vision is that Timnath's downtown district, which we're sitting in right now, would become a distinct, vibrant hub of economic, cultural, and social opportunity for our whole town, a center that we all call home together. And so just as an FYI as well, tonight we are going to be recording this for those who can't be here so that they'll be able to find it on our YouTube channel, or you can find it on our YouTube channel afterwards. And I think we have a town staff here. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Scott Robinson of the Community Development Director.
Scott, thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
Absolutely.
And for representing the town. So, a couple announcements, and then we're going to get started with our guests. One is that next Wednesday, hopefully you know, we are holding as an organization a fundraising event down the street at the Feed and Grain called Bluesberry and Jam. And we'd love for you to buy a ticket and come if you haven't already decided to do that. There are going to be gourmet pancakes by Sunny Stacks. There's going to be some really good music by Charlie Brown's Sweaterface, which is a FOCO favorite. And it'll be a great way for you to learn about the work that we're doing together as Together for Timnath and to get involved in that. So that's next Wednesday on the 23rd. And then the only other announcement tonight is that on Wednesday, the 13th of November, we'll be having our November forum. And it will not be here, and it will not be at the CF&G, but it will be over at the town hall. And the reason for that is because we're going to be talking with Scott, as well as Justin Stone. So Scott's the new Community Development Director, as he just said, and then Justin, the Public Works Director. So mark your calendar for that. Becca.
And another announcement is that we are going to be doing a downtown event on December 14th. Santa Claus is coming to town. We have some businesses involved. We're going to have a wonderful Hallmark movie style event. So if you're interested in participating, volunteering, coordinating, anything like that, please talk to one of the board members. Jonathan and myself are on the, and Roberta's on the committee. So
and we have a barbershop quartet.
Barbershop quartet.
Yeah.
That's new information.
I know, it just happened
Yes, so come join us, help us out.
Yeah, so December 14th. Lastly, I would just remind you that Together for Timnath is a volunteer-run organization, as you're hearing tonight, but that doesn't mean we don't have expenses. And so, as always, we invite you as community members to support the work if you think that it's important work for our town together. And you can see, I think we have a donation sheet over on the main table when you come in, and we're grateful, always grateful for your support. But that's enough from me. Let's get into a conversation. That's why you all came. So I'm going to sit down so that they don't have to turn their heads at me. And again, can we just give our panelists a warm welcome? Stacy Brown, Michelle Vance, Executive Director of Windsor Downtown Alliance, and Walt Ellish, Business Development Manager for Berthoud, Colorado. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I'm going to invite you as you answer or converse together. I mean, there's not a ton of us in here, and I think we can hear, but if you want to pass that mic, that'll be super helpful to all of us. So each of you are economic development leaders in Northern Colorado. And so if we could name kind of one overarching question for our conversation tonight, it might be this. How might we achieve the good things in our town's comprehensive plan? A good economic, social, and culturally rich future for our town. And can we do this without at least one person dedicated to that task in the town? So it's kind of a big question. So before we hit the ground running with that, I thought it could be great maybe just to start out by hearing from each of you on what drew you to and drives you in your work today. And there's no, we'll just start with Michelle.
I have an answer to your question though, so the light's right here.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle Vance. I'm the Executive Director of the Windsor Downtown Alliance. We're the economic development hub for downtown Windsor. We're a tax finance district, so we're a special district within the downtown. So our funding comes from, in 2011, our district was formed, and whatever that tax base is capped at that moment, and any tax increment, so growth on that tax base comes to the Downtown Development Authority, which is really only about $200,000 a year. But what really saves us and keeps us going is we are blessed to have the sales tax that's generated in our downtown. So we receive between $580,000 and $600,000 a year. And what we do is I call it turning the butter. So we bring in the revenue, bring in that taxes, bring in the sales tax, and we turn that butter. We may give it back out to the property owners and business owners through marketing, through grants, through development, through tax increment financing, which is like a tax share back with the property. And I'm going to give you a great example of success is our Windsor Mill. And I'm sure all of you have visited the mill. That project was the ugliest thing you've ever seen in your life when you drove by it. Like it burned twice and got hit by a tornado, so I don't think it could be any worse. That project's property tax in 2019 was $3,000 a year. Now it is $90,000 a year. So that project right there is pretty much the majority of the property tax that we collect in downtown, but it shows you what success is. That project also received about $3 million in either cash or tax incentive. And right now they got about $1.3 million in cash, and we're giving back half their sales tax and half of their property tax. So it gives them an incentive on success. So that's kind of what we do. Turn the butter.
You want to answer the question?
No, you can, we'll get,
Yeah.
we'll,
Get to the
trust me,
question.
we'll get to it, yeah.
Give it a
Don't forget.
Yeah, so just to start, what drives you or what originally drew you to your work?
Yeah, so good evening. I'm Stacy Brown. I'm the town manager for Kersey, but prior to that, I was an economic developer for 25 years, all along the Front Range, as far south as Lakewood, as far north as I actually served all of Larimer County, and then I just left Windsor. I did 13 years.
She recruited me.
In Windsor. That's the smartest thing we ever did. So, I've always had a passion for helping people, and I always had that drive and the desire to it. I fell into economic development. It was totally who I met, not what I knew. I was studying genetics at CSU, and then I shifted gears and went to UNC and graduated, and then got a job at the Loveland Chamber out of college, and it was who I met there that uncovered the passion for economic development for me. And then she stole me away, and I went down and worked in Lakewood for her. Was down there during like the scraping of Villa Italia, building of Belmar, those kind of things. So, but I've always had, and Michelle has nailed it, and I've always stolen this from her, which is called the servant's heart, right? We want to give back to the community. I am not an entrepreneurial person. I love the people that do that. But I want to build a community for that to happen and that to be able to happen. So again, I fell into city management. I know that sounds really weird. Never had a desire to be a city manager. And it was funny. We just got back from an economic development conference, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? How'd you become a city manager?" I'm like, I applied, and they liked what I had to say.
Well, economic development pays the bills, so that's important too for cities.
Yeah, so I think they understood my development background and where Kersey's going. We're about 7 miles east of Greeley, and we know that it's coming, and they want me to take the good and the bad and the ugly, I think, that I've learned throughout my career and apply it and help Kersey grow in the way it wants to grow. So I think that was what made me the most successful candidate, I guess. I can't speak for them, but I love it. I love being the decision maker, and I love driving how we're doing economic development for the town. and how we are business friendly and implementing those things and putting those foundational things in place through our land use code, through our municipal code, through the zoning code, all of those things, putting those in place so that we can be successful and working in that regard of really making economic development and business growth the priority for the town.
So, and you don't necessarily have to answer this, Stacey, it could be a joint. I'm just gonna pretend that somebody like me might not know what economic development professionals do. So could you help us, when you've just thrown out a bunch of terms,
We like our acronyms.
yeah, what is some of, what, can you just kind of explain the daily tasks and some of the work that you carried then from your former role in Windsor or prior to that to now your role as town manager that made you a candidate that they Kersey said, oh, yeah.
So we don't make it easy on ourselves because we all have different titles, we all have different job functionalities, and an economic development director in one community could be having a totally different function than another one. Typically, we focus on primary employment, and that's attracting and retaining employers who pay higher wages, and they pay health care benefits, and it leaves more money left over for discretionary spending at hopefully the retail establishments you have in your community. Anybody pretty much west of the Mississippi is sole responsible for sales tax revenue to a municipality. We don't have a lot of, I mean, our property taxes seem high, but you go back east and they're through the roof. So you think about that. So it's pretty much where we're solely relying on retail sales tax. But what also drives that, and my last 13 years in Windsor, we didn't have that opportunity. We missed it. We missed the Costco that Timnath got. We missed the Shields that Johnstown got. We just missed it. And part of it was because the infrastructure on the bridge of 392 and I-25, CDOT's like, no more development because you can't handle any more traffic on this bridge until you get that taken care of. So by that time, it was just too late. So I focused when I went to Windsor specifically on primary employment, the jobs, the 25 or more employee companies who were solid, who were sound. We moved here in 71 for Kodak. I was 5 weeks old. I didn't have an option, but had to come. But my whole goal when I went to Windsor was to never let it be that one horse town again. To never let one industry control and devastate a community if something happens to it. And so I worked on diversifying our industry base. A lot of places like Fort Collins or Denver have specific industry-based clusters that they go after, and they try to specifically recruit all of these. And it makes sense if you're a larger city and you can attract the talent there because you have all the amenities that those people want. But for Windsor, it was, let's just diversify our manufacturing, diversify all of those things so that if one company goes down, gosh forbid, it doesn't impact as many people as it would such Kodak or HP or something like that went down. So during my tenure there, I mean, and a lot of people think economic developers, oh, we just give away the money, we're just the fun people, which we do and we are. But yeah, we sell community. But we are really the salesperson. So I created the whole department for Windsor, started it up, and we focused on primary employment, retail, and the most important thing that we did throughout the whole entire process was the business ombudsman. We were the business advocate on behalf of the business through any and all municipal processes. And it was not fun because I battled against institutionalization in engineering, in planning, in building, all of those key functions. They were just like, what are you doing here? And why are you telling me that I have to be friendly? Because you do. So, it was just, but, and I had great friendships, and I still do to this day, people in those departments, and I don't mean to bash them, but they can get that bad reputation, and then sometimes they can deserve it too. So it's just very interesting. But I did about $12 million worth of incentives when I was there. Sounds like a lot of money. The ROI was $1 billion worth of investment back into the community in the form of property tax, buildings, and equipment. I think it was over 3,000 jobs that were created, and just a lot of wealth generation with that jobs. And I had to focus on something because we didn't have the retail opportunities that came with landing Costco. Love or hate them, they are a driver in your community, and they will do those things for your community that bring you the revenue, that bring opportunity. So I don't know if I explained that very well, but
yeah, that was great.
We'll all be experts.
Yeah,
especially as a Detroiter, to just hear about it in a single industry, right? And now needing to diversify your role. So thank you. Okay, so roll.
Thank you. I think Stacey said it perfectly. We all have servants' hearts. we want to see, it's exciting for me and probably all of us to see projects happen. Whether they're the Costco's or whether they're the coffee shop on Main Street. Maybe for some of us, it's more the coffee shop on Main Street that we really get excited about. To see communities like Tinmouth and in my case, Berthoud, just flourish and grow from within, because that's where we are in Berthoud. But before that, I've been doing this for a lot of years. I started out as a city planner and doing city planning work for about 5 years, and then was recruited to go on the other side, economic development, and haven't and enjoyed it ever since. And through that process, I've worked in 5 different states, so it's a little bit different for me. I helped start up 3 different organizations, economic development organizations, one with the electric utility, and 2 with regional development organizations. So I'm more of the entrepreneur at heart. Stacy and Michelle are just great builders. Stacy has done a beautiful job in Windsor. I'm sure Michelle is too. But it's all about making a difference in our communities. We really enjoy, I think, as Stacy said, our job descriptions may change from community to community, because what I do in Berthoud is a little bit different than what Stacy has done in Windsor. And we're soon to create a DBA, so we may be working closely with Michelle, or what Michelle does for Windsor. We're going to create a similar organization in Berthoud. But it's all about making a difference in our communities. I think all of us would say we have a passion for our communities, and I do too. Even no matter what, I've been in Berthoud for about 10 years, but no matter where I've been, I've always engaged in that community and became an active participant in that community to help them grow and prosper. So I think that's the bottom line for most economic developers: is we want to make a difference, a positive difference in our communities. Now, granted, as Stacy alluded to, that's not always fun and games. Sometimes we go up against our community development departments. Other times, like where we are in Berthoud, we have somewhat of a yin yang. I say yin yang in terms of some of us want growth, some of us don't want growth, and that's pretty much maybe a theme across northern Colorado right now, or maybe not just right now. And so we deal with that too. We think we know. I'm pretty sure we know. This company is going to mean X for our community. Let's work with them, whether it's the incentives, whether it's the permitting process. Let's make this deal happen because of Y. And so it's those challenges and opportunities that I think most of us deal with every day that it really makes it exciting to be in our profession.
The first question?
Land use code, how can they make a difference?
Can one person do it all?
Can they do it without a designated person?
Yeah. So let's move. We're going to move toward that. And before we do, I just want to let everybody here know too. We're going to have 2 times that we can pause to get some questions from you all. I think we have some cards in the room, right? So if you think of a question while you're listening to us talk, and if you just want to raise your hand, Becca or someone will give you a card, and then we'll be able to ask those questions. So Together for Tinmouth envisions Tinmouth's downtown, as I said at the beginning, as a sort of a vibrant hub for the whole of the community, economic, cultural, social opportunities that are celebrated by our neighbors, supported by our residents. A place that Tinmouth's residents love to live, right? And that other people also want to come to. So to work toward that goal, our organization has sought to amplify the needs and desires of the community, to collaborate with local businesses, property owners, and developers to advocate for certain actions for the town. One of those actions that we've advocated for is to hire the town's first economic development director or manager. In part because it presently seems no one in the town is proactively working to attract the types of businesses Tinmouth residents have prioritized. So with that kind of broader background in mind, Walt, you've got the mic, so we'll just start with you. What do you think Berthoud would look like without the role of an economic development professional on town staff? Could you even give some examples of successes that might not have happened without that role?
Well, there's a lot of that. I'm not a lot of successes, but I'm actively engaged in pretty much every project that comes into town. Now, at least we're trying to recruit or retain in town. It's also not only just recruitment, it's also retaining your current businesses. And in Berthoud, I spent a lot of time doing that, helping our current businesses, our existing businesses, grow and expand into additional sites or additional buildings, making them aware of those kinds of assets and or incentives. So I spend a lot of my time doing that, primarily because we don't have a lot of sites that are shovel ready to go. So most of our growth comes from within. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time. And so to have somebody like me or somebody in my role not going out into the community, working on Main Street, walking up and down on Main Street, or in our case, Second and First Street, where our primary employees are, knocking on their doors pretty regularly and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. They laugh about that. They laugh about that, but it's true for all three of us. We really are from the government and we really are here to help. And so with that, I think the proof has been, I'll get calls, I'm sure all of us get calls from one of our current employers and say, hey, Walt, I need X, or I got this issue, can you help me here? Who do I contact at the state of Colorado about this? We get those pretty frequently. And they'll turn to us because we're an easy call, but also the ombudsman that Stacy mentioned is part of what we do. We want to make it easy for employers to grow and expand. And one of the ways we do that, you give them one point of contact, and that's one of us in our communities. And they take advantage of that. So having somebody that's doing this every day, I mean, there are some communities that will use the CD director or a planner, but they've got other things on their plate. They do. If it's anything like Berthoud, maybe here in Tibbet, they got plenty of things on their plate that they're dealing with that they probably are not able or be in the position to go out and meet with our businesses, have coffee with our businesses, have lunch with our businesses on a regular basis, so we know what their issues are, where they're coming from. So there aren't many surprises. We don't like surprises when it comes to our companies. We want to know where they're coming from primarily most of the time. And so to do that, you have to be on the street. We got to be knocking on the doors.
Pass it over to Michelle. And kind of same question. What do you think Windsor would look like without an economic development professional on staff? Can you give us examples of successes that wouldn't have happened?
So I'm not going to speak for Stacy because we wouldn't have Windsor looking like it does now without her, but I'm going to talk about downtown. Our downtown is part of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, so we are a nationally certified Main Street program. We're also a Main Street program through the state of Colorado. We are graduate level, so there's different levels, like an affiliate, there's like undergrad. Anyway, we're graduate level, but we're one of very few that are nationally accredited. We had to go through a major process last year. But that being said, you cannot be a Colorado Main Street program without a paid employee. You can't belong to a national program without having a paid employee. So a Main Street program is really the economic developer for downtown because we're kind of everything. A lot of Main Street start like what you're doing right now. You kind of remind me of a grassroots Main Street program, right? And you follow the 4-point approach and you have your committees and all that. But you have to have somebody who's responsible for the budget, for the money, for working with the town board and councils and city manager. And in order for what we do, we have an actual agreement that has to be signed by our mayor for us to be a nationally recognized Main Street. So we actually have an MOU with the state of Colorado. So that cannot happen without having an employee. So I think that right there shows how important it is if the state of Colorado and the National Trust says this is how it has to be. And we have our own little, economic development program that, we go to a conference every year. We do all the fun things that they do, but it's more of because Main Streets are different. They're everything. They're housing, retail, sometime manufacturing, which is like a brewery, right? We're all of them in one. So I don't even think of primary employers. It doesn't even cross my brain. Like her, she's looking at, so her people are my customers, right? So she, gets a company that pays really high wages. They have discretionary funds, so they can come downtown and have a beer and go out to dinner, right? So we count on her to fulfill our downtown. So you have your story here. your downtown is just ripe and ready because you have a lot of people live around you with discretionary funds. They just need a place to call their own, and downtowns are your sense of place. When you have company, you do not bring them to the Walmart parking lot and go, oh, look, this is so great. See my Costco, it's so cool. Do you have one? Right? No, you show them your coffee shop, you take them to the wherever, right? And that's what we do. Our job is to be that sense of place. There are no other towns like your town, period. Everybody has all the other things that they bring and what, you know, Costco's, but no one has what you have. And that's what makes your town better than any other town. That's where the pride comes from, right? If you don't have pride where you live and you're just a kind of a fake town, because sometimes Timoth kind of gives off a little bit of that from the freeway. You don't know you exist. You wouldn't know you had a downtown. My husband and I found it on accident. We lived in Wellington because I was the economic developer in Wellington before I came to Windsor. And we drove down on accident. We had this really great fair in the middle of the street. It was amazing. And we stopped and hung out all day. And then we discovered your brewery. We're like, wow, because we were going to Costco. We hate the freeway. So we came the back way, right? And we discovered you. And I'm like, I never would have known. You have a tiny little sign that's this big that says downtown, but that you could do way better. But you have an opportunity, and this is your town. And this is why you need to tell your elected officials how important, because no matter what you have around you, and you can build it up across the street, it's not your downtown.
Stacy, kind of related to that, now that you're a town manager, what are your views on these things, and particularly the role of public and private sector economic development responsibilities? How do you kind of weigh those things?
Yeah, so it's interesting because now as a town manager, I do all the things. So I have to hear about the water tower bell going off and the, and the wastewater treatment plant, something just blew and now I've got to spend $10,000 for a part that will be here for 3 weeks. And it's very interesting and dynamic to balance those two things out. But we need to focus on that hometown feel while we're still growing, much like Windsor had that precedence to try to do. And to do those things, you have to instill them in your land use comp plan and in your zoning and in your municipal codes and all of those things. So it really needs to be that theme, and then doing a strategic plan out of those things, and then holding you and myself and the staff accountable to when we want something, when we want to do something, when we want to spend money or whatever we do. How does it tie back to that strategic plan that have the input from the residents and the people who live there, that make it Kersey, that make it Timoth, that make it Windsor, that make it Parkville? How do we do those things? And it's that interesting balance, and don't do them all at once like we're doing right now. It was not a fun summer. And we also did round 1 of the Main Street program. And so we've got some beautification projects going on that, as well as trying to balance drainage issues, because we do not have stormwater drainage in Kersey and it's flat. So we're working on that right now. We just got round 2 of funding for the Main Street program. And mostly it's replacing that sidewalk. So it's trying to build that sense of place like they've been able to do in their communities, because we're only 1,800 people. We're smaller, but I want to be them when I grow up to a certain extent, because I want to instill that infrastructure. So it's that balance of that public investment in infrastructure, as well as the private sector in the development standpoint. So I had to moderate a panel, and then they were like, oh, somebody couldn't come from rural. Can you just speak about incentives? And I'm like, okay, rural incentives. And I'm trying to think, what do we do? We don't have a lot of fees we can waive because we outsource everything, right? We outsource our planning, our engineering, and our building. But one thing I just recently did was I put $5,000 towards a company to annex into town to pay for their annexation cost. Not only once, because we want to control the way of the traffic and their 200 trucks a day they're going to have, but we want to welcome them in and help work with them so they can find their workforce, they can do all these things that they need to do. And I want the revenue to come in too. If they're going to impact our community, it's nice to have that revenue coming in as well. So that was one that I never heard of, was doing an incentive to help annex in for those kind of things. And then just be aware of your tools. And then also investing in, we got $1 million grant and we did broadband in Kersey. We have 1,800 people. We have high-speed internet coming online in the next 60 days in Kersey. Windsor never was able to do that. And so as much as I tried, but I couldn't, I had to stay in my lane too. I didn't do downtown. because Michelle had it covered. I mean, they had stuff before, we had a lot of political stuff going on there, but it was just, I stayed in my lane. I created my program. I had my strategic plan for economic development, and that's what I did. And then when Michelle came on, first of all, she completely saved the Chamber of Commerce that we had. It was in the gutter, and it was just not going well. They made a poor hire choice, and it was just, I know we're putting this on YouTube, and I'm just blabbing away on it, but anyway, that's okay. So they made a poor, and then we stole Michelle to run the chamber, and she turned it around. So it was just phenomenal, her energy, and I've already told her that, the moment I can afford her, I'm stealing her. So that's just, sorry. Oh no, she's not leaving Windsor. But I would love to have her energy,
We miss each other.
Yeah, I know. And, and Walt, he's got that experience and that dedication as well. But we need that. So I know I'm getting around about this question, but it's finding those ways to invest in your community that aren't necessarily giving away fees or taxes and stuff, but it's putting that infrastructure in and that groundwork in. So we did broadband. We put Alla broadband in all throughout town by applying through NeoConnect at CSU. And we got $1 million. And without that, we wouldn't have been able to put the broadband in. So now we're doing the Main Street program. We're putting in new sidewalks downtown because the sidewalks were really narrow. I mean, you cannot have a mom in a stroller and another person next to you even walking down the street. You can't. It's so narrow. So we're making those investments. It's almost like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come.
It's true. That's true.
So we're trying to do those things. So from that, I didn't do a lot of P3s, public-private partnerships in Windsor, except for Future Legends was a huge one, but we didn't really do the bonding issue of a traditional P3. We just gave them the land and then told them to go forward. And so it was a unique situation what we did there. So, but it is important that everybody, you talked a lot about, can they do it without a voice? I don't think you can, without a dedicated voice for economic development, but you also have to have buy-in from the top. All the way down, the city manager, the community planning development, the public works team, the elected officials, the citizens, everybody has to do that. And with Windsor, what made my job so easy was, while they never had an economic development director before, they had 3 different studies. They really want to make sure that they did it, and they all came to the conclusion of, you need a dedicated voice of economic development. You need a cheerleader. You need a person out there selling your community. So I created all these foundational items, and I went out and I sold and I sold and I sold. I went down to Inverness, down in Denver, to a conference. Windsor, tornado. That was all they thought that Windsor was. And now they don't say that anymore. So those kind of things, and having that person that is their sole focus, is to sell your community based off of your strategic plans and all the things that you want to do and grow, and having that ability and that voice, it's so vital. Because I know you said you're a planner. I just learned that tonight. Planner, but and I was talking to, it was funny because I was talking to a former city manager of a very large community around here who's not in there, and he came to me, he's like, "Oh my God, what's wrong? Why does it take so long stuff to get through municipalities?" And I went, "You ran one for what is the deal?" And he goes, "Why is it the planners just say no?" And it's not always the case, but they have a tendency to do that. And I said, "I think they teach it to them in school." And he goes, "I'm a planner, right?" And I went, "Nope." Because that was my nature. He goes, "You're spot on. It's just that protect the community spirit, which you need to do that. You need to have, Windsor was great at doing that from the facades, the way that the stone, facade on the building was there, and made it really look nice and beautiful and clean and safe. So you need those people in that place, but you also need them to understand that their paycheck comes from the coffee shops and the manufacturers and all of that stuff. So don't always say no. Find a way to get to yes if you can. Sometimes there will be situations that don't work, but that's where your economic development person comes in to try to find that solution for them.
So much.
Just another good example, just following up on Stacy. Those of you who've been around, Berthoud was known as a no-growth community for about 10 years. So between 2000 and 2010, the community grew by 230 people in northern Colorado. So if you think about that, the only way that could happen is if it's intentional. And it sort of was. But then new administration, things changed. To your point about you need somebody to really promote and be out there speaking on behalf of the community. They hired a new town manager, not that, I don't know, that had nothing to do, but at some point, Mike brought me in to do just that. To get the word out, travel around Denver, talk to the brokers in Northern Colorado to change the perception of Berthoud, that we are now open for business. So for the next, I came in about 2015, I think it was 14. For the first 2 years, I was spending a lot of time in coffee shops, restaurants. I was in Denver. If there was a workshop or conference in Denver, I was there because I knew there was going to be brokers there, that I could begin to spread the word. Berthoud is open for business. It took some time, but no longer today are we. Or maybe people may not even be aware that we were a no growth community for about 10 years. So I think that's just part of being out there and helping to share that story that, hey, we're open for business. So without somebody, it just happened to be me, it could have been somebody else, dedicated full time to go out and do that, I'm not sure we would be here where we are today.
I want to grab questions from the room in a second. I did just want to touch on one thing you said, Stacy, when you were telling your story. Part of that included annexing this company so they can come in. And you said at one point, and I wanted the revenue too. But it struck me that it was and that would be nice. So one of the things I'm hearing from all three of you is that vision is driving this, a vision for the community, which includes money, but it isn't necessarily driven first by money. Would that be a correct way of translating what you're saying?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you need the money to do the things that everybody wants done, right? The roads need to be paved. Everybody likes their cul-de-sac snow plowed and their parks to play in and all of that stuff. And there's different ways about going about doing that, and that's providing the amenities or the cultural centers or the hubs or the downtowns, or it's, providing good jobs and then they build, different buildings or different things like that. So it is on the forefront because I have to balance the budget, right? And I want to hire good people and I want to pay good wages and I want those people to get the experiences that they want to have and have the greatest tools to help the community do that. But I'm very lucky in Kersey because the team there is just incredible and they all want to help the community. And not a lot of us actually live in Kersey. So it's just phenomenal. A lot of them live on larger acre places outside of Kersey, but they come in and they show up every day to give back because they care about the community and about, they want to make a difference. So it isn't always about the revenue. And I've said that I lost a lot of companies at some point to Pueblo when I worked, competing. And, I always ask companies when they come in, what are your top 3 priorities? What do you need to be successful in our community? Because if you're not going to be successful, let's get you next door or let's get you down street. Because the worst thing that can happen in my mind is for you to come into our community, hire people, they buy a house, they're putting dinner on their, food on their table for dinner, and then you close down because you can't make it work there because that taxation environment or whatever is just not viable for you. And then that person loses their house or they, lose their job and lose the house. So to me, that was the worst thing that I ever wanted to happen. So if people came into me and said, well, it's money, I want money to come to your community, I'd say, I'm sorry, we don't work that way. So good luck wherever you land. And I hope that you're successful there, but that's not how we operate.
Thanks, Sam. Do we have some questions?
Yes, we do. So we have so many questions. And I know Berthoud has had experience with this, so I'm gonna throw it to you first.
Right.
But now that Main Street is set to be closed to through traffic in 2025, do you have any opinions on how you would create appeal to small businesses to actually come here? Keeping in mind that the estimation is that it's a cut, about 60% cut in through traffic. Right.
What's happening?
Berthoud closing or Timnath?
Timnath.
Timnath through traffic is closing, and I know Berthoud has experience with that.
Yeah, so they're building a parkway just a block this way to the east that'll take all traffic around Old Town. And Main Street will be open from the north, but close at the south. So there'll be an entrance on 2nd and on 4th, which is the street right here.
Permanently closed. You won't be able to drive right here?
You'll be able to drive here from the north.
But not get to Harmony.
Yeah, but not
Directly.
So it's like a one-way? Sorry, I did not know about this.
I saw the signs coming in and I had.
They're permanently closing the southern access point.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Well, it's not for me. The road's still gonna be there.
They're calling it a
This kind of Road
reroute.
5 is gonna be rerouted around
Yeah.
downtown.
It's a closure, but they're calling it a rerouting.
And then there'll be access points on Fourth and Second and from the north.
Will there be monuments and entry monuments and things for your downtown?
They
That's
say that's
great.
but-
Yeah,
Great.
So, yeah, well.
So Berthoud was not quite the same. A number of years ago, I think mid 2000, 287 used to come right through the heart of Berthoud. And then there was a plan in place and CDOT implemented it, and there was support from the town, from what I understand, to go around Berthoud where 287 goes today. And so that took a lot of through traffic off of Main Street. But it didn't close Main Street. So that's the difference. And we have a state highway coming through town. So if you're going to Carter Lake, you're primarily coming through downtown Berthoud. So there's a lot of traffic that still comes through Berthoud. So I think in our case, from what I understand and heard, a lot of the businesses didn't mind the rerouting because that was pretty much through traffic. So it didn't eliminate traffic altogether. It decreased the amount, but we weren't as severely impacted as what you might all be feeling if you're actually closing the road or making it a roundabout or a through street, whatever it is. So in our case, it wasn't quite the same. Our businesses adapted to the opportunities of the traffic coming through town. It's still somewhat of a struggle because when you lose maybe close to 6,000 or 7,000 cars a day, that's a big impact. And but they've adapted. It's been 10 years or so. So and they've had plenty over 15 years. They had plenty of time to transition, to adapt. And but you work through that. You know, if you were trying to attract the traffic, I mean, signage is going to be so important, I think, for you all in making sure that people driving in cars are aware of what you have in your downtown. So in our case, it wasn't quite the same because they didn't close the road, and we still have there's still 9,000 cars coming through Berthoud on a daily basis.
Sounds like, because we've talked about, it's an either or, what about the and? It sounds like Berthoud settled on the and option.
Yeah.
Where there's multiple.
So if I leave Mulberry and come down Fifth, can I drive all the way through?
You'll get through
To Second.
to Second Avenue.
So you can drive to here?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
you can drive all the way down to Second.
But you
So
can't
what was
get all
their
the way to
reason, I
Harmony.
guess, behind not giving you both options? To say, okay, if we're doing a reroute for commuters or truck traffic and we're doing the parkway, why can't they still allow people to come through?
The answer to that's been unclear.
Okay.
And it was made 20 years ago,
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
15,
Yeah.
15, 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
See, our biggest problem is people hate the traffic on
Yeah,
Main Street.
that's the
Well, that is-
opposite. There's-
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
rest.
We did a master plan this last year, and the number one thing is, can you stop the traffic on Main
trucks.
Street?
The safety is a
Yeah.
concern.
And the majority of the negative impact on our Main Street is from the truck traffic.
Yeah.
So, but that ship has sailed and mansions are now on the other side of our lake and that'll never happen, right? So it's that, and you're not allowed to talk about traffic at any of our meetings anymore because it's not gonna fix it. I said, we need to have a lot of people downtown, so those trucks have to stop 25 times every time they come through town, so maybe those go away, right? I'm like, let's just create more people and life, and then it's kind of like leveling water, right? It's like path of least resistance, so more liveliness that we create in our downtown, which will make people not want, especially the trucks. But just make sure if you talk to your town, make sure you have major signage. You create lots of events and things for your own community to care about you. You know what I mean? So, because I bet you have a hard time getting Harmony Club out of there, Harmony Club, because they have their own little world up there. And this neighborhood is probably fabulous for you, riding your bike in and stuff, which is great. But if that happens, and I know you're downtown, you don't have a lot of sales tax generation down here. There's a lot of like houses and a church and non-tax paying. So there's really no revenue for the town. Like this property doesn't pay anything to the town. You know what I mean? So there's that going on too. So if like a bean counter up at the tower is looking at your downtown going, oh, They don't pay anything. Why should we care? You know what I mean? That's why you're here, right? Because so just because it doesn't pay doesn't mean it's not important. And
Or doesn't pay
Yeah.
currently, right?
Yeah.
Because there are properties that
Do
can.
you have
Right.
suggestions on how we can appeal to small businesses to get them to come?
so I've noticed, so for one thing, when you do get an economic development person, please do a master plan for your downtown. That has to happen. When I took over I took over our downtown during very chaotic time over the back lots. And I'm sure you all heard about the Windsor Wall and all that stuff. So I was sitting over at the chamber watching this chaos going on across the street from me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to communicate with your community or else you're dead. And so they kind of whipped me away from the chamber and said, come run our Main Street and Downtown Development Authority. So we went right into master planning, and then we took all the problems. I've already have another study that spun off that master plan, and we're talking about it today. We just had a big meeting today in our town about our second phase of our master plan, and we want to build a plaza. We actually want to shut a road down. 5th Street that's right by Windsor Lake Coffee that takes you into the park should be our Old Town Square. Because our traffic is the biggest negative impact on our downtown, let's bring the park into downtown and create that connection. Because right now, nobody in our master plan said that our park was our biggest asset in our downtown. No one connected our park to our downtown because it's not a lovely jaunt there. You dirt, railroad tracks, right? So if you could soon and right away start a master plan and start your planning process and work it in with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the Main Street. I will give you our master plan, copy it.
And make sure it's in the towns. Master
Comp plan, so
The
we,
land
yes,
use comp plan,
yes.
it had a lot of
That's right.
vibrancy for downtown.
Yeah.
It really made that. a
Well, we did
priority.
it simultaneously. I kind of hopped on board when I came. I knew the town was updating their comp plan. So we did ours as fast as you could ever possibly, and our planners and everybody, we were working so we could approve ours when they approve theirs. Now we're doing our zoning code for downtown and make sure when you do revitalize and want to bring business, you have the right zoning code.
To allow
Because
it.
this is one problem I have. I had it yesterday, and this is why the ombudsman and the advocate. On Monday, I had a business that's been working for 6 months trying to open this little arcade downtown called Sip and Flip. It's like this old timey arcade. He had stamped plans, worked on it this for a long time, and he went to have his final, and the guy walks in that's safe built, which most of us have to do our planning, or Safe Built does track homes perfectly. They don't do old buildings. Okay, so that's another story. So they came and like, oh, you're gonna fail. And the guy goes, like, you know how when you like work your tail off to open and you're like, look half dead and you're like aged 20 years in 6 months trying to open a business. And he called me. I thought he was gonna cry on the phone, and he's like, Michelle, can you come down? We're having a meeting, and and it was over a step. He had ADA in the front, but because he was like 8 square feet bigger, he had to have ADA in the back. And it was this dumb step. You'd have to rip the door out, put this 12-foot concrete ramp, thousands and thousands of dollars. And he needed to be open by Halloween because that's his clientele, right? He's worked so hard. And so we're all meeting. I got the architect, we got the banker, we got everybody safe out. They're like, sorry, this is the code. Sorry, this is the code. And I'm like, there has to be a way. And I'm like, okay, if I give you a grant for these steps, because we can do ADA, if I give you like $5,000, can you get this done? The architect goes, I can get it done by tonight. So we had the plans that night we had, and I looked at Safe and I said, you promise he has to be open in 1 week. Yes, we'll give him a temporary C of O. I'll give him 90 days. I said, you better give him 90 days because he didn't know about this. And man, we all were in the room, but I fought like this, and everybody's like, oh wow, that was nice to have someone go up against the town a little bit, right? Because the planners are very powerful. They're very powerful, and businesses aren't architects, and they're not planners, and they're not designers. They are normal Joe that just wants to play Sip and Flip and drink a beer, right? And they don't know anything. And I don't either. I don't know anything about planning, kind of. But I mean, you know what I mean? I'm not an architect. I don't know. And boy, we worked it out within 15 minutes. And then guess what happened? The next day, because the town stamped those plans already months and months and months ago and didn't catch that, they let it slide. And so he called me and didn't need the grant. And he was just like about ready to pop. You know what I mean? But the town, we fought, And then the town realized, wait a minute, we gotta have some customer service here, and Scott bossed that. Good job, Scott, thank you. You did good, and let this man, but that's what people walk away with, so it's real, y'all. I don't know where I was going with that, but real life.
Becky, we have one more question. Do we have another question that you? No, okay, not currently. All right. So, sorry, just catching up. So what steps can towns take to attract the types of business, like, okay, maybe it is a sip and flip, right? The types of businesses residents need and want, and that business owners also want to kind of offer to their community because they've heard, well, there are other people who want to come sip and flip, right? So what steps can towns take to attract these types of businesses? Including sit-down restaurants, grocery store, right? That sort of thing. And that can be an open question to any of you.
So really having the comp plan and having open meetings and a lot of open meetings and a lot of input from the residents who live there about what they want to see. So it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of open houses. It's a lot of late nights. It's a lot of putting the dots on what you want to see, on that board or on that plan. The difficult thing that I always found, which was fun and is hard to accept, but everybody wants all the things and you can't have them all. So, and once you get, like, we started off with under 30 different restaurants or places in Windsor. I had over 75 by the time I left. It still wasn't enough. There wasn't a Chipotle. There wasn't a XYZ. There wasn't a Trader Joe's. There wasn't a Whole Foods. There wasn't a, Panera Bread. All of these things. Look, I'm a foodie. I love those things too. If you didn't think I could get them in, I would, So I was trying. The problem is what is the educational component. So it's understanding the realistic attainment of what you can actually get in your community. And we may not have the population for a Trader Joe's. We do not have the population for an In-N-Out burger. We didn't have all those things. I would still go after them because the answer is always no unless you ask. So it doesn't mean I wouldn't try to put, shove Windsor, to the forefront with them. But the infrastructure that goes into some of these places, and you talked about sit-down restaurants, that is the heavy lift for companies. So if you want to attract those, and that becomes the goal for the town and the community as a whole, then you write an incentive program that incentivizes those to come. We'll pay $20,000 towards all your equipment to go into a building. There you go.
And we'll give you
And you
half
have
the
to-
sales tax and your property tax back. You can do all that.
You have to do those unique incentives. We had a situation at one point where a lot of people wanted the quick serve restaurants in Windsor. We didn't have any. We had a McDonald's, that was it, and a Sonic. Sorry, we had a McDonald's and a Sonic, that was it. And I kept going to the town manager at the time and I said, if this is what we keep hearing from the residents and the students and everybody who's here, then why are we not writing a program or even put a moratorium, for the next 12 months, any quick serve restaurant that comes into our community and locates gets 75% of your fees waived, boom, done in the next 12 months.
And then you sell it.
Then that's an incentive. Loveland did something a little bit unique a while ago, well, probably about 10 years ago, where we're going to waive all your building permit fees to build your basement. If you want to build your basement, we're going to waive them all. Well, guess they still had to go through the permitting process, which a lot of people don't. Sometimes they build their basements without doing it. And guess what it did to the property tax base when the county and the city came in to give it final inspection? It just raised them. So in the long run, they'll get paid back on it, but they incentivize it. So just these unique one-off things that you can do, but really alignment, again, getting everybody on the same page, doing all these things. What do they want? I loved restaurants. I loved all those things, but it wasn't always viable. We had a lot of restaurants that came in, and then there's the component of you can't control who's running it either. We had a lot of restaurants that went out. We had a road closure that was temporary. It was 60 days, and it was just horrific. And we did everything we could do. There was 13 different things that we did and programs that we did for coupons. We would call the high school and said, hey, if your kids want food, can we put a menu in your thing so they can order food and group deliver from these restaurants? We did a downtown, a business after hours that we had all these different things that we did from them, and the restaurant still failed. And it failed, but it was what they didn't tell the story of is that it was failing before this construction ever happened. So we can't control those anomalies of the actual running or management of the company, but now that infrastructure's there and there's a great thriving
Yeah.
restaurant in that place. So it's, you can do those things, but just understanding the dynamics of retail is tough. My goodness, it is so tough and hard because every retailer is different. They have different priorities and different requirements, whether it's an internal homegrown mom and pop or whether it's a franchise. You have so many requirements. A Dunkin' Donuts takes $250,000 off the top that goes to corporate before you even put a dime into the actual store. So when everybody talks about, oh, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, and I do too, I want those places to shop and I want those places to eat. But it's understanding that dynamic that retailer, that person has to have $250,000 in cash that goes right off the top. Then they have to find the space, lease it, hire, train, staff it, all of those things too. So it's not as always easy as, yes, I want that to happen, So it's very complicated. Retail is very complicated. Primary employment, 9 times out of 10, they just want to build a building and get up and going. And they want help with workforce, maybe. So
I have a fun story. So we have a problem with lunch in our downtown. I have 2 businesses that are open. I have 9 restaurants in our downtown and 2 of them are open for lunch. And it's like chicken or the egg, right? It's like if I open, no one comes. So they open a week and it didn't work, right? So I'm working on a grant right now. It's called the Lunch Gap Grant. And so if you open for lunch, you have to open for 3 months. You have to write a contract between me and them for 3 months. You have to open your kimono to me. And you have to tell me what your costs are, everything for that 3 months, what you need, how many employees, can be bare minimum, and then I will pay what you don't make. So your gap, so I'm gonna take your risk on. So I'm gonna carry your risk and I'm gonna cover your gap, what you don't make, so I can get my downtown open for lunch in the summer, right? And it's gonna start in June, and then so I'm working in my budget, some marketing, I'm just gonna be some marketing and this and that and say downtown's open for lunch. Because a lot of people won't come because there's only one business like the Mexican restaurant and William Oliver's, which doesn't have a huge menu. They're really a whiskey place. You know what I mean? So it's not like, oh, Hearth would be great, right? And, Tavern and different restaurants open, but it's chicken or the egg, right? And I'm going to take their risk off their hands. And I'm going to take that gap. And I want my downtown open for lunch. And then people will come. And then you're open. And if you make your money, I don't have to pay you. So if you cover your costs, I don't have to pay you. If you don't, I pay you. And it'll be a weekly average run. So whatever you don't open for lunch on that week average or don't make your money, I'll pay you. So that's what a DDA can do.
So I wonder if you, and maybe give it to anybody really, but this, you're talking about incentivizing some of this. What are, appropriate and then inappropriate uses of incentives to attract or retain or expand businesses? And this fits, but how does that tie into like our Main Street, right? Where we have a population that now exceeds 10,000, and it's a pretty wealthy population, and yet our downtown district doesn't have lunch.
Well, you don't have
anything else.
You don't have much business
go,
down here,
right.
so you gotta get to know those property owners big time and say, I would be at those doors of vacant buildings going, how can I change your mind? How can we get you out of here? And how can we incentivize you to either sell your business and then let's vision what we can make. That's why you have to have a master plan. We lost the backlots development in downtown, so that's now permanent parking, which I love because they helped me make my 5th Street, which it's like a kind of the thing that bubbled up that no one knew could happen. So what we did is we're like, wait a minute, we have this ugly gas station, we have a radio station on the high traffic corner, we have these little tiny buildings, we have a metal building on the lake, like we have these properties that aren't paying any sales tax at all. And so we're like, what if they're redeveloped? So we hired a company to say, okay, here's these properties. What are they worth now? And what would they be worth if they're redeveloped? Because we are 100% occupied in our downtown. We don't have vacancy. So I'm like, oh, are you going to move? I hope so, that insurance agent. You don't need to be here. We could bring in someone else that does retail, right? So we're always get to know the property owners, must know those property owners, and you got to see what it's going to take for them to move. Majority of them are very old. They are. I have a lot of widows. They just like that revenue that comes in. So you have to talk to them and say, hey man, if you redevelop that, you'll triple your revenue. Your kids will be very happy. You know what I mean? But you have to convince them, you have to get to know them, you have to have a relationship, and that's why you have to have that person that knows everybody on the street.
I think incentives play a role, but like I mentioned, you don't have to give away the farm to get everything. You shouldn't have to, because if you do, they're gonna look for that next community to do that. However, everything I did, and I think I was one of the first in Northern Colorado to do it outside of the NCD did it kind of a little bit, but we did an economic impact analysis model. And we plugged all of the costs in the town that it costs to provide that business service and all the revenue that was coming in from that business, and then there's your net. There's what you have to play with. There's what you can say, okay, and our sweet spot was 5 years or less in a payback, 3 years. The mill was different. That project I worked on was 20 years because it was a political driver, right? It was tornadoed, it was burned, it was, so it was just like people are like, would you do something with that? So there's the weird ones that are like the anomalies with it. And then if I already have a McDonald's, I'm not going to incentivize another McDonald's to come in. They were the first ones to the gate. You win, you get it, however it goes. So very different. And we had a primary employer incentive guideline. If you meet these, then you get this. Retail never had an incentive guideline because everything is different. Every single situation is different. And it comes back to priorities of what you want. Do you want the entrepreneurial? Do you want those startups? Do you want those kind of companies, or do you want national chains? Or do you want both? And who do you incentivize?
Great information. What Windsor has done, Perth, it's a little bit different than that. And I think it all depends in terms of the incentives. You don't use incentives to make a bad deal good. Yeah. Fundamentally, you don't do that. You use incentives to make a good deal better. That's fundamental. But it also depends on the mindset of your community, of your town board, and what they feel that how they should use or could use incentives to attract business. Not all communities are as aggressive as Windsor. Perth, it isn't. We have incentives. We do. I'm going to go back and talk to Chris on Tuesday about things that Windsor has done and say, Chris, what do you think about this? But each community is a little bit different. So I have no idea where your town board, where your community feels about providing the kind of incentives that Windsor has done, and maybe others have done to track those retail businesses. As Stacy alluded to, retail is so much different than attracting primary employers. We had this discussion today with Ryan Schaefer and Rich Warner, because I'm doing a study session with our town board on economic development in 2 weeks, and so I'm bringing in some experts to convey to the board things that we already know, but it's always nice to bring in people.
Someone on the outside, you're like, oh, they're doing it. I want that.
Yes. But retail businesses are so much cost centered in terms of, as Stacy said, 250,000 right off the top. Or they want to know how many people are within 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your establishment. Some of them might be 5 miles, 3 miles. So you have to have that understanding. You got to know where those businesses, what their hot buttons are in terms of what takes them, what they're looking for to locate in your community. Because you could go out, as we have done, you knock on a number of different doors or meet with different retail businesses, and then you find out Bertha just doesn't work now at this point in time. It doesn't mean I don't continue to knock on their door, because at some point we might be attractive to them. But it's good to have that information before you go meet with them. And it takes somebody really full-time to do that. You want to know also where people in Timoth are shopping, besides Costco, or where they're going out to eat. Are they going to Fort Collins to eat? Or are they going to Windsor to eat? So the more you have that data, you can take that to a restaurant owner and say, hey, we know what percentage of our people live in Timoth, or going to Windsor, or going to Fort Collins.
We like you though, we like you.
I know you. I'm just using
I see a lot of.
Well, then you can turn around and sell that to the retailer.
Yeah.
Yes.
You say, look, we have 40% of the people that are going here, or you should come in and
They're
build
driving
here
15 miles,
to get it. So data is powerful.
It is. It's important.
You want to know a fun fact? His boss his boss was my old boss in California. So he was my assistant city manager. He came to Colorado first and then he helped get me here.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah, isn't that cool? I just kept.
Question from
Yeah,
the floor?
we have some more questions. So speaking along the lines of working with businesses, how much of your day-to-day is spent reaching out to prospective businesses versus reacting to businesses that come to your doorstep?
So I'm gonna be honest, in the beginning, doing economic development, it was nonstop pounding the pavement, knocking on people's doors, telling the story about Windsor. When Windsor started to take off, it was all reactionary. And that was not effective. I'm gonna tell you that right now. And the reason why is because we had the demand drivers for, and constantly, why do we have an in and out, right? Like, well, I could have probably made it happen. Prime example, one of my failures, Chick-fil-A. We've been working with the owner in Loveland for 4 years. The mayor and I mean, everybody, we went to tour the facility. We went there, we thought it was happening. Turns out he wasn't the key player. It was the real estate person that was making the location decision. They went next to Wendy's on Crossroads in Loveland. So not having the ability to go out and to really dig into that and just hitting at the surface level, we were so busy. I didn't have any other options because we were growing so fast and there were so many projects. At the height, we had 171 projects a year that we call prospects per year coming in. That means about every other day I'm answering calls and putting together packets of information and providing information to companies that were coming in. It was just unbelievable amount of people and companies that were trying to come in. So it was just insane. And so I had just shifted. I'd shifted the whole organization. I promoted 2 people within the organization, one to take over BR&E, because that is the most, business retention extension. So that is the most vital core programming that you should have. You should always take care of what your businesses that are here first and foremost. Always
And your chamber of commerce
does a great job with that.
Before she had her department, I was her BRE. So I took care of the businesses that were in Windsor. You know what I mean? My job was to ensure that you were taken care of, you were promoted, you were good. She didn't have time. She was a one-man band when I came to Windsor. She just
for a long time. Yeah. So before I left, I created and promoted our analyst to a BR&E person. And I gave business attraction to another one of my employees. And then I was going to go out and hunt. I was going to hunt for the big retailers, the big, we call them unicorns, like the Costco's or whatever, the revenue drivers for that. Because once you get one of those, they bring the pad sites, they get you the little, the little guys that you want. And then I became a city manager. So then I left and I felt horrible, but it's set up that way. The whole structure, all the job descriptions and everything were set up that way. And the business parks, I filled the majority of the business parks because I put together data that showed the majority of the prospects that we were getting wanted, anywhere from 10 to 25,000 square feet of space, flex space and this. So I would show it to all the developers and I said, look at these prospects that we're getting in. We have 0 space for this. This is what we have. So we built up 2 business parks, 1 Falcon Point off 392 and 257. It filled up in less than 2 years, just built up out of the ground filled. So that knowledge and that data and those facts that you can share with the development community to make it happen. But, now I don't have as much time in the city manager role to go out and it's the same scenario. But I reach out to the people that I can when I can and try to do, grab and reach out when I can, but it is almost reactionary at this point too. Until we get some of those foundational items like our land use comp plan and municipal code and zoning, until we get some of those done, then I can shift gears and chase. So I don't know what your experience is, Paul, but
it's a little bit different. Percentage wise, it's probably 60-40 until we get our DDA created, because I'm working pretty much on helping that off the ground. But once that's created and we have an entity that's really focused on our downtown, that's we're in partnership with the town. What we don't want to do is have a DDA created and then our values and our vision is not the same. That's not gonna work. So we want to make sure that if it is created, it's in partnership with the town. Then we'll probably hire somebody also to work with the DDA, and then somebody in my position would spend most of their time doing what Stacy did in Windsor to go out and try to attract additional primary employers and large retailers. We're working on that right now. we need to, one of our limitations is our sites. They're encumbered and there's not much we can do with them at this point. But in a few years, they'll be available. And you don't wait till that time because businesses, it takes a number of years for them to really pull the plug and make a decision. So we're knocking on doors pretty constantly.
But for your downtown, you have so much opportunity. You just need to get to know who these property owners are and what will it take for them to.
Let's do one more question from the floor and then,
If I may, on retail, I just noticed when Stacy and Michelle were speaking. Now, you're a town of 10,000 people. We're a town of 13,000 people. Windsor's 40. Close to 60. Their build out is like 100,000. So we're in a different position than Windsor when it comes to retail. I mean, they look at our numbers, and we provide them with the numbers I shared with you. So many of our
I
residents are
wouldn't be
going.
surprised if their tax revenue and sales tax is as high as Windsor's.
Timothy?
Yeah.
Oh, from Costco, yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'm like,
You're
they
right.
have a cash cow that
it
lives
is.
over.
You're I-25. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of the
Yeah,
downtown.
I'm
That's
like,
right. Forgot about that. We have loves, so that helps to some extent.
I have stinkers.
But yeah, we're still a town of 10 and 15,000 people. Yeah.
so one more question from the floor and then one more question from me.
Yeah, this is, I think we'd like to hear from each one of you. Of all the things discussed today, what is, and not discussed, what's the one thing you recommend that the town of Timbits should do to revitalize Timbits downtown? What's that top number one thing?
Maybe that actually ties into the final question and maybe a broader perspective too. So somebody once wrote, place matters. No one lives in a vacuum, disembodied or isolated from ecologic necessity. Existence requires location. Life has geography. Our contexts of land and culture matter for shaping who we are and who we might become. So in light of that and this question, what is the one thing and what might we do as a community to help us recall and continue to create a sense of place, identity for this growing community?
You need a master plan.
Yeah.
That you have to do before you, because you don't even know what your sense of place means to your residents. And so the master plan is it's a year-long process. It's really fun. Do not have a lot of words. Do a lot of pictures, a lot of drawings. So all these properties that you could dream of what they can be, hire a landscape architect and dream with them. So you have a visual for your community to see things. So it has to be very visual. You must have a plan so you can get your residents in the room. Everybody has an opinion of what they want. Do not do it in a vacuum.
Invest. They need to invest in your downtown.
Yeah.
They don't have to hire someone. They don't have to do that. They need to give you the money to kickstart the downtown so that you can hire somebody that's the advocate for the downtown and to celebrate and to build those things like Michelle did. So Windsor was unique. It started the same time the Economic Development Department did. We have a little bobbles with the DDA because they hired a firm to do it. I'm not anti-firm, but I don't recommend it because Michelle is the face of downtown. She's the one she goes door to door and she has that investment. And she has those relationships in the downtown. A firm doesn't do that. And so that was, I think, one of the wobbles that they made in the beginning with Windsor. They should have hired a director, and I was an advocate for that from the get-go.
We were paying $200,000 for someone to work 16 hours a week. That's what firms cost.
Now Michelle works 200 hours a week.
$16.
But and I don't, and I don't know Tim's budget. I'm not gonna say that I do, but I'm gonna tell you that there is. Michelle's right. It's a cash cow. There's a lot of revenue coming in, and they really need to invest in the core, which is your downtown. That is your sense of place. That builds the gathering places.
And it'll get the people out of the club and get them down here to care.
Yeah, it gets them involved and engaged and gets them on the committees that you need and gets that sense of community.
Like
So
we have these goofy events like wine walks and blues and brews crawls and stuff, and they're goofy, but oh my God, we get 1,000 people coming to these events and they put on these stupid sweaters and have a blast and we have fun. We do after parties with the DJ. Like we have, it creates community. It's different. It's an adult event, and no kids, you know what I mean? And it's like, And your community, I bet your age is a little higher, I feel. There's a lot of retirement folks are, they're chasing their grandkids
No, it's
here.
actually,
Is it down?
Median age is
Well,
about 35.
our biggest growth point right now though in Windsor is the parents following their kids.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's our biggest, that was my biggest visitor to the chamber is that we moved here from blah, 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 because our kids are here. And that's what I see in Windsor right now.
So I would just find a way, show me the money, right? Like, I hate to say that, but find a way to see how you can convince if this is the plans and the rest, the squeaky wheel works, especially when you're elected officials. I don't know if they're district or I don't know, or if they're all at large for your elected officials, but talk to them, email them, connect with them, keep repeating, because you guys need a funding source. You can't do it alone. You have to have that starter. So I would say that's the biggest thing. They need to invest.
They're both absolutely right. I would just add to that, the businesses need to be in unison. You need to work together. In Bertha, just a quick example, we had a Main Street program. It was started back in 2008. I think it was operational for, 5 years or so. It's still there in name only, but nobody wants to be part of it, to be honest with you. It's one person. In the meantime, 15 businesses in our core downtown came together and created the Downtown Bertha Business Collaborative. And they're working together, and they're the ones that are doing the Friday night walks and all that kind of stuff. And so what they did was they realized that there was a void. And now they're coming together. They've got a really nice website. The town knows that they're operating. I work with them quite a bit and in many capacities. But it takes the businesses to come together, be one voice, and go to your town board.
Privately led,
Yes.
publicly supported.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, that's
Privately led, because they've got to have skin in the game too, right?
Yeah, your businesses have to be at the table. It can't just be residents.
yes.
Sometimes it's hard, boy. To me, to get a business and come to things, it's like I have to drag them out of their. Now when I walk in, they're like, "Oh God, what she wants," But they know me, but then it made my heart sing when that business called me and needed my help. I was like, I can't wait. Let's go. We're going to go to war. But it worked. It worked.
I don't know if the Timber Town Board gets requests like the town of Bertha does, but to Stacy's point, just say private led, how'd you say that?
Privately led, publicly supported.
That's perfect.
That should be your
Because if
tagline.
you're just going to your town board and asking them for money, and there's not a lot of support behind you, that's not gonna work. So if the business community, your downtown business community goes to the town board, and is part of their overall strategic plan, I think there's gonna be
And it
support.
helps to get the person who invested the most money to get up and talk about how much they've invested. We have over 12 million in the last, since 2011, we have $12 million in private investment. And that's 17 new facades in our downtown. If it wasn't, we were blessed to have Blue Ocean come in, and that's OtterBox. And they bought 4 terrible buildings and redid them. But that was like the pebble in the water, right? So when they did it, it caused everybody else to go, "Ooh, I need to upgrade something to that guy, and I look really bad now," And now when you come to our downtown, you notice who has not done a facade. So our board, I've gone 2 years now with no major facades. So I'm like, okay, we need more carrot, because our facade program was a little carrot, here, let's dingle. Now we have a $40,000 grant with a 10% match.
Oh, my.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Because I'd rather do 2 a year than 0. You know what I mean? We used to do this little mini grant, $500. That's kind of like hilarious. And so I'm like, oh, we got to revamp that. So we have a $3,500 mini grant. That'll give you new paint, maybe a new sign or something like that, because you got to have more carrot. And I have money to spend, so I don't want to put it back into the kitty. I want to keep turning the butter. So when that guy gets it and this person gets it, even if it's a paint job and I hate box signs because we have these ugly box signs in our downtown. One caught on fire the other day. I hate them. And so I'm like, oh, we need to get rid of these box signs. What's a flag? The mount signs. And guess what we did though? You get one of those grants and we'll pay for your sign. But when you leave or go out of business, the mount has to stay with the building. So now you just replace the little thing inside, right? You don't take everything. So those are the things that you can do. And then your downtown starts to become very lovely. I lived in a downtown. I used to be a downtown manager. I took over during 2008. We had 50% vacancy. Our city, Chris and folks, spent $15 million in redeveloping all the sidewalks. They did a huge thing. And the guy that ran the downtown was really good at project manager, but he wasn't a very community like talker seller. And my first day, our city manager says, here's the deal, Michelle, you have 1 year, we need to get people in this downtown. And it was during the recession, so we use all those words like staycations and all that stuff. And man, we sold downtown. We had a farmer's market with 80 vendors and beer and music and wine walks and all the things. And in when I left in 4 years, we were 100% occupied. And people were kind of jealous. The chamber hated me because we were so popular, because everything happened in downtown there. And so there was another little air going, we hate downtown because everything's so great down there, you know, but that's okay. It was our success. And I'm like, well, move your business, we'll take you, you know, but that's how it worked. Like the city spent all this money and they were like, Michelle, sell it. Get people down here, because it was a terrible recession and it was really sad. Everyone was like broke and couldn't go to wherever vacation. So we're like, staycation, we're going to plan a party. We did street dances, we did dumb stuff. And I never worked so hard in my life, but it felt so good to see the labor of love and everybody enjoying their town. It's like, I'm like the Leslie Knope anyway of the community. So it's like, we're going to build that, you know. Now I'm going to build my plaza. That's my park. So the plaza is going to happen on 5th Street. We're going to have all this parking and it's going to be amazing. So film at 11.
Hey, can we give them a round of applause again? Just a reminder, our November forum is at the town hall on Wednesday, the 13th of November, but next Wednesday, you can still get tickets for Bluesberry and Jam, and you'll want to be there for that. So thank you again for coming out, and thank you for coming together for tonight.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
This is so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.